everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about why she reacts when you stop giving her access. Sometimes the moment she notices you pulling away is the moment she finally realizes how much of you she had been taking for granted. Not because you became cold, not because you played some clever game. You simply stopped making yourself so available. You answered when you had time. You stopped checking whether she was okay every few hours. You stopped finding excuses to start conversations that she had gotten used to receiving from you. And strangely, that's when she noticed. Maybe you've seen this before. You send her a message and she takes hours to answer, so you tell yourself you're not going to care anymore. Then, somehow, the moment you genuinely stop checking your phone, her name appears. A simple message. Hey. Or maybe something completely ordinary. How have you been? Nothing dramatic, nothing that proves anything. But you feel that little shift inside yourself because you know she could have asked yesterday. She could have asked last week. Why now? And this is where things become psychologically interesting. When someone becomes accustomed to your attention can stop feeling like something they consciously notice. It becomes part of the emotional background, like a light that's always on. You don't stare at a lamp all day because it's there, but turn it off, and suddenly the room feels different. Human beings can adapt to emotional availability in much the same way. When you are constantly checking in, constantly responding, constantly making yourself easy to reach, the other person may begin to experience your presence as predictable. That doesn't automatically mean she doesn't care. It doesn't mean she's secretly manipulating you. And it certainly doesn't mean every woman will react the same way. People are far more complicated than that, but sometimes when your availability changes, something inside the relationship becomes visible that was difficult to see before. She may start wondering, why is he different? Did I do something? Is he losing interest? Is there someone else? And sometimes the question isn't even about you. It's about the sudden absence of a feeling she had become comfortable receiving from you. Being noticed, being pursued, being emotionally reassured, being able to reach you. That's an important distinction, because access to you and emotional connection with you are not the same thing. You can give someone constant access to you and still feel emotionally distant, and you can become slightly less available while actually becoming more grounded, more present, and more genuine when you do connect. That's where a lot of men get confused. They think, if I stop chasing, she'll chase me. Maybe, but that isn't the healthiest reason to step back. The healthier question is much quieter. What happens when I stop abandoning myself just to keep someone close? That question can change everything. Because perhaps you've been answering her immediately, not because you genuinely wanted to, but because you were afraid that if you didn't, she might lose interest. Perhaps you've been initiating every conversation because silence makes you uncomfortable. Perhaps you've been giving more and more, hoping that eventually the imbalance would correct itself. And maybe nobody ever told you how exhausting that can become. You start measuring your worth by her responsiveness. One warm message makes you feel wanted. One distant message makes you question everything. And eventually, you're not even relating to her anymore. You're monitoring her. Waiting, interpreting, checking, hoping. That's not intimacy. That's anxiety wearing the clothes of connection. And when you finally step away from that pattern, not to punish her, but because you're tired of living that way, she may feel the difference. Not necessarily because she suddenly needs you, but because the emotional rhythm between you has changed. And sometimes, that change reveals something neither of you was ready to admit. Because when your attention disappears, what she misses may not be you. It may be the feeling she had when you were always there. And those two things are not nearly as interchangeable as they seem. But there's one reaction that can tell you which one you're actually dealing with. And when you see it, you may finally understand why she suddenly becomes much more attentive after you've stopped reaching for her. It usually doesn't begin with some dramatic confession. It begins with something almost embarrassingly small. She notices that you don't react the way you used to. You post something and she finds a reason to respond. You walk into a room and her attention seems to follow you for a second longer. You stop initiating conversations and suddenly she's the one asking questions. Not deep questions, sometimes almost pointless ones. How was your day? What are you doing? Did you end up going there? And you might look at the message and think, why does she suddenly care? Maybe she does. But there is another possibility that's worth considering. Your absence has created uncertainty, and uncertainty can make people pay closer attention. Not because uncertainty is some magical attraction trick, because when something becomes less predictable, the mind naturally starts trying to understand the change. Think about someone you normally see every morning. You barely notice them. Then one morning, they're gone. You wonder where they are. The next morning, you notice again. By the third morning, you're actively looking. Nothing about that person necessarily changed. Your awareness did. Something similar can happen emotionally. When you were always there, she didn't have to wonder where you stood. Your attention answered the question for her. Then you became quieter, and suddenly the question returned. Where do I stand with him? That's when some women become more attentive. But be careful here. This is where dating advice often becomes cynical. It tells men to manufacture uncertainty. Disappear, ignore her, make her jealous. Wait exactly 3 hours before replying. Don't do that. If you have to constantly calculate your absence to make someone value your presence, you're not building closeness, you're building tension. And tension can feel exciting for a while, but it isn't the same as trust. What matters is what happens after she notices the change. Does she simply become more active because she doesn't like losing attention? Or does she actually become more emotionally engaged? There's a difference. Imagine she suddenly starts texting you every evening, but the conversations are still shallow. She wants your attention, but she doesn't ask about your life. She wants reassurance, but doesn't offer much vulnerability herself. She becomes interested when you're distant, then comfortable again the moment she knows you're available. That pattern may tell you something. Perhaps she's responding more to the possibility of losing access than to the possibility of knowing you more deeply. And I know that can sting, because part of you may have been hoping her reaction meant something bigger. You may have spent nights wondering whether she secretly cared. You may have replayed tiny moments in your head, the way she looked at you, the way she smiled, the message she sent late at night, the question she asked that seemed strangely personal. And then when she finally reacts to your distance, you think, there, I knew I wasn't imagining it. Maybe you weren't, but don't rush past the evidence. Watch what she does with the opening. Does she move toward genuine connection? Or does she simply restore the old arrangement where you give and she receives? Because your goal isn't to make her chase. Your goal is to discover whether there is something mutual underneath the attention. And sometimes the clearest answer comes when you stop trying to force one. You don't announce your withdrawal. You don't punish her. You don't become someone you're not. You simply return to your own life. You answer when you genuinely want to. You make plans. You spend time with people who matter to you. You stop treating every interaction with her like an emotional emergency, and something subtle happens inside you. You become less obsessed with what her behavior means. You start noticing how you feel around her. That's a major shift. Because when you're desperate for someone's attention, you study them. When you become emotionally grounded, you start studying the relationship. And now, you're able to notice something you couldn't see before. Maybe she wasn't afraid of losing you. Maybe she was afraid of losing the version of herself she got to experience when you were constantly giving her attention. Or maybe she really did realize that your presence mattered more than she had admitted. The difficult part is that both can look almost identical at first. And there's one subtle difference that usually begins to separate them. It has nothing to do with how quickly she texts you. It has to do with what she becomes willing to risk emotionally once she realizes you're no longer standing there waiting for her. What she becomes willing to risk emotionally. That's where the picture starts getting clearer. Because attention is easy, vulnerability isn't. A person can send you 10 messages in one evening and still reveal almost nothing real about themselves. She can suddenly become playful, curious, even affectionate. But then you say something honest about how you've been feeling, and she changes the subject. That tells you more than all those messages combined. Because when someone genuinely feels the possibility of losing a meaningful connection, they often have to confront something uncomfortable inside themselves. What have I actually been giving this person? What have I been avoiding? Have I assumed he would always be there? And sometimes that realization changes behavior. Not overnight, not perfectly, but noticeably. Maybe she starts remembering things you told her months ago. Maybe she asks about something important to you without being reminded. Maybe she stops making you carry every conversation. Maybe she begins sharing parts of herself she normally keeps private. Nothing dramatic, just small openings. And those small openings matter. Because emotional investment often appears quietly before it appears clearly. Think about a woman who normally keeps everything light. You joke, she jokes. You talk about work, friends, random things. Then one night, almost casually, she says, "I don't usually tell people this." And suddenly the conversation feels different. She isn't necessarily declaring romantic feelings. She isn't promising anything. She's simply allowing you to see behind a door she normally keeps closed. That's a much more meaningful response to your changed availability than a sudden flood of compliments. Because now she's not merely trying to regain your attention, she's increasing her emotional participation. And that distinction can protect you from a lot of confusion. I've seen men become deeply attached to the smallest signs of pursuit. A woman texts first 3 times. He thinks, she's falling for me. She becomes jealous when he talks to someone else. He thinks, she can't live without me. She asks where he's been. He thinks, she finally understands my value. Maybe, but none of those things by themselves tell you what kind of connection she wants. People can seek reassurance without wanting commitment. They can dislike losing attention without being ready for intimacy. They can feel attraction and still be emotionally unavailable. Human beings can hold conflicting feelings at the same time. That's why you shouldn't rush to label her reaction. Watch it, let it unfold. And more importantly, watch yourself. Because there is a dangerous moment that can happen when she finally starts coming toward you. You feel relief, almost euphoria. The phone lights up and suddenly all that uncertainty disappears. You think, she does care. So you rush back into the old pattern. You become available again. You start initiating everything. You start giving more. And slowly, the balance returns to exactly what it was before. This is the part many men miss. Sometimes the real test isn't whether she reacts when you step back. It's whether the relationship remains healthier after you step forward again. If her interest disappears the moment she feels secure that you won't leave, that's useful information. Painful information, perhaps, but useful. Because you don't want someone who only reaches for you when you're slipping away. You want someone who can appreciate you while you're standing right there. That doesn't mean she should constantly reassure you. It doesn't mean affection has to be intense every day. Real relationships have quiet periods. People get busy. People become distracted. People have their own lives. The difference is consistency over time. There's a certain feeling you get when someone genuinely values your presence. You don't have to keep creating emergencies to be noticed. You don't have to disappear to become interesting. You don't have to make her afraid of losing you. You can simply exist, and she still makes room for you. That realization can be strangely emotional for a man who has spent years believing he has to earn affection. Because suddenly you understand. The goal was never to become harder to access. The goal was to stop giving access to parts of yourself that were never being respected. Your time, your attention, your emotional energy, your dignity. And once you understand that, something changes in the way you look at her. You stop asking, how do I make her react? And you start asking a much harder question. If she knows she doesn't have unlimited access to me anymore, what does she choose to do with the access she still has? Because her answer may reveal more than you ever expected. And sometimes, the most revealing reaction isn't when she comes closer. It's what happens when you calmly refuse to chase her back. There is a strange kind of silence that happens when you stop chasing someone. Not an angry silence, not the kind where you're trying to make a point, just nothing. You don't send the extra message. You don't explain why you've been quieter. You don't ask whether something is wrong. You simply let the space exist. And that space can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent months filling every silence. Because when you're used to reaching out, silence feels like rejection, even when nobody has rejected you. You may pick up your phone 3 or 4 times. You may type something, delete it, type it again. Then tell yourself, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And underneath that decision, there may be a fear you're not admitting. What if she doesn't come back? That's the real fear. Not losing the conversation, not losing the attention, losing the possibility. Because as long as you're still reaching, there's still a tiny feeling that you can keep the connection alive. When you stop, you have to find out whether the connection can survive without you carrying it. And that can hurt. But it can also be freeing. Because sometimes the silence gives both people information. She gets to notice your absence, and you get to notice hers. Maybe she reaches out, maybe she doesn't. Either way, something becomes clearer. And if she does reach out, don't immediately assume that every message is proof of deep feelings. Look at the quality of her effort. Maybe she says, "Hey, where have you been?" That's curiosity. Maybe she says, "I realized we haven't talked much lately. Is everything okay?" That's a little more emotionally aware. Maybe she tells you she misses talking to you. That's more vulnerable still. And maybe she doesn't just say it. She changes something. She starts meeting you halfway. She makes time. She listens. She remembers. She becomes more consistent. That's the difference between reacting to your absence and responding to your value. The first can happen because someone doesn't like uncertainty. The second often involves genuine emotional investment. And there's another detail that matters. How does she behave when you don't immediately give her what she wants? Suppose she reaches out and you respond later because you are genuinely busy. Does she respect that? Or does she become cold? Does she punish you? Does she suddenly withdraw affection? Does she make you feel guilty for having a life? That doesn't automatically make her a bad person. People have insecurities. People sometimes react poorly when they feel uncertain. But repeated patterns tell you something. A healthy connection can tolerate a little space. It doesn't require constant proof. And you know what's interesting? The more emotionally secure you become, the less attractive these little games become to you. You don't want to make someone wonder where you are. You want someone who can ask. You don't want to disappear and wait for panic. You want someone who can say, "I've noticed you've been quiet." You don't want to be chased because you're withdrawing. You want to be chosen while you're present. That distinction is enormous. Because perhaps you've been interpreting her reactions through one question. Does she want me? But there is another question that may be even more important. How does she treat me when she doesn't have to win me? Think about that. Anyone can become intensely interested during the possibility of losing someone. The deeper question is what happens after the fear disappears? Does tenderness remain? Does respect remain? Does curiosity remain? Does effort remain? Because real connection isn't built from permanent uncertainty. It's built when two people gradually learn that they don't have to perform to keep each other interested. And maybe that's what you were really looking for all along. Not a woman who panics when you walk away. A woman who notices when you become quiet because she actually knows you. Someone who can feel the difference between your normal silence and the silence that means you're hurting. Someone who doesn't need to lose access to you before remembering that you're a person with feelings. That's a very different kind of intimacy. And it requires something from you too. You have to stop using your distance as a test. You have to stop secretly hoping she'll prove your worth. Because if every withdrawal is secretly asking, "Will you chase me?" then you're still giving her the power to decide how valuable you are. And there comes a moment when you finally understand that your worth cannot be measured by how strongly someone reacts to losing access to you. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can learn is not how to make her notice your absence. It's how to remain emotionally steady, whether she notices it or not. And once you reach that place, something unexpected can happen. You may still want her. You may still hope she chooses you, but for the first time, you no longer need her reaction to tell you who you are. And maybe that's the part you were waiting to hear. Because underneath all the questions about her behavior, there was probably another question, a quieter one. If I stop giving her access to me, will she finally realize what I meant to her? Maybe. But you can't build your peace around that possibility, because the most important change isn't happening inside her, it's happening inside you. You begin to notice how much energy you used to spend trying to remain important to someone. You remember the messages you sent when you had nothing to say, the conversations you kept alive long after they had become one-sided, the times you pretended not to care because admitting that you cared felt dangerous. You remember looking at your phone at night, not even expecting a message anymore, just checking, again and again, as if the screen might suddenly give you an answer about your worth. And maybe that's why her reaction affected you so deeply. It wasn't only about her. It touched something older. The fear of being replaceable. The fear that if you stop trying, people stop choosing you. The fear that love has to be earned through constant availability. And once you see that pattern, you start becoming more careful with yourself. Not colder, more honest. There's a difference. You can still care about her. You can still be affectionate. You can still initiate a conversation. You can still tell her you miss her. Being emotionally grounded doesn't mean pretending you don't need anyone. It means you don't betray yourself just because you need someone. That's a much healthier kind of strength. And if she comes closer after you've stepped back, let her come closer. Don't punish her for noticing. Don't make her prove herself through endless tests. Talk to her. Listen. Pay attention. Give her room to show you who she is. Maybe she realizes she had become too comfortable taking your attention for granted. Maybe she becomes more open. Maybe she starts making an effort she wasn't making before. And if that happens consistently, you have something worth exploring. But if she only appears whenever you're leaving, then disappears whenever you return, you don't need to keep solving that puzzle forever. You can simply recognize the pattern. That may be difficult, because uncertainty can be strangely addictive. You keep thinking there must be one perfect message, one perfect amount of distance, one perfect moment that will finally make everything click. There isn't. Relationships aren't machines. You can't enter the right combination and make another person love you. You can only become honest enough to see what is actually there. And sometimes what is actually there is beautiful. Sometimes two people finally stop performing. She realizes she doesn't need to pretend not to care. You realize you don't need to prove that you're worth caring about. The relationship becomes quieter, less dramatic, but somehow more real. Other times you discover that the connection depended too heavily on pursuit, and when you stop pursuing, there's simply not enough left. That can break your heart, but it can also save you years. Because losing someone's attention is painful. Losing yourself while trying to keep someone's attention is far more expensive. So if you've recently stepped back from a woman and you're wondering why she suddenly seems more interested, don't rush. Don't celebrate too early. Don't assume you've discovered some secret law of female psychology. Just observe. Is she reaching for you? Or is she reaching for the attention she used to receive from you? Is she becoming more vulnerable, more consistent, more respectful, more willing to meet you halfway? Or does she simply become interested whenever she senses you're becoming unavailable? Those answers matter. And if you're honest with yourself, you may already know which one you're seeing. Maybe that's why this has felt so personal. Because deep down, you weren't really trying to figure out women. You were trying to figure out whether she cared. And perhaps the answer won't come from the intensity of her reaction when you walk away. Perhaps it will come from what she does when you calmly turn back toward her. Without chasing, without performing, without pretending you're someone you're not. That's where genuine connection has a chance to begin. Not with fear of losing access, not with games, not with proving who needs whom less, but with two people who are finally free to choose each other. And if she chooses you when she doesn't have to chase you, when she doesn't have to fear losing you, when she can simply see you standing there, fully yourself. Then you won't have to spend so much time wondering what her reaction means. You'll feel it, not because it will be perfect, but because it will be mutual.